Hello and welcome back to another session, political discussion about anything and everything that requires politics and a knowledge of. I am Jaden. I want to reiterate my position here at GSUS. I'm still a facilitator, kinda. I'm doing a lot of things everywhere in my life, but I'm definitely here doing these political discussion times. I've been trying to make flags for another group that I'm with, and then of course GSUS flags, who um, patches, headbands, materials, and stuff, trying to get it all formulated so that we can have material goods to represent when we're out there on the picket lines, strikes, protests, rallies, everywhere that gets presence with us so that we can get people in the group, in the movement. But we're here to talk about politics, more specifically political theory and theory in general as a whole, because theory is encompassing as an all, as a form of knowledge to attain so that we can know more. So if you look in the chat, you'll see right there our little bulleted list going from top to bottom. Revolutionary Optimism, which after reading Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P, I emerged this sort of synthesized, this sort of understanding, a supplement, complementary ideas concept to revolutionary suicide. So revolutionary optimism, we'll be talking about revolutionary suicide from the Huey P. Newton's book and that concept and ideology as a whole. Natural negation, that second bullet point, which is derivative itself from the negation of the negation, and not a law of dialectics, and a law of the study of motion. That's kind of what the dialectics are. So dialectical materialism is that study of motion, and when you add materialism to it, that motion regards itself to the restrictions, limitations of the material conditions, like gravity, hydraulics, water, air density, stuff like that, like your physics, how you explain life materially. And then, of course, the bottom point, the unity of opposites and struggles, the first law, or wherever you look it up, one of the laws of dialectics by Engels. Unity of opposites and struggles basically states that two makes one. When you see one, there exists two of it. You can partition it into particulars, of which then makes the general. Really good stuff. But here we go from the top to lay this conversation down. Revolutionary optimism, what is it? What is it about? Is it the next big rave? Is it something we're to be seeing next couple years? And I noticed that date is entirely wrong. It is supposed to be 2025. Just fix it for my notes. Revolutionary optimism, what is it? What is it about? Why do we have to concern ourselves with stamina and discipline when it comes to revolutionary optimism? First, to understand optimism in this sense, you have to understand what it means to commit suicide, revolutionary, from the standpoint of Huey P. Newton when he writes it in his book. So to establish first, revolutionary suicide is this core concept, and is this understanding that living in a system, especially when that system is not beneficial to the proletariat, beneficial to the people, beneficial to the everyone at hand, it's not really a good system, a beneficial system to work in. So you would rather commit suicide. However, this suicide is contingent on the fact that you resist and fight against the system that oppresses. In this capitalist system, revolutionary suicide indicates that you are fighting against the capitalist system, in the which ways that usher in a new mode of production, a mode of production antithetical to the capitalist system, because you're not just fighting aimlessly, I'm resisting however which way. Revolutionary suicide is very specific. It is revolutionary. And you are graciously dying for this cause, for this effort to not conform and be complicit in this system of oppression, this capitalist system. Revolutionary suicide basically demands of the individual, you will not abate and aid this system that continues to oppress equally all around. But the fear fact that you just don't have capital, you don't have this exuberant amount of money and stuff like that. This materialized labor and the appropriations of which revolutionary suicide basically states you will resist, fight, organize against this system that oppresses all to then liberate, of course, all of the oppressed in that system. So should you die in the system, which everyone does who lives, dies, you will do so revolutionary, not being complicit within the systems that oppress, of course, fighting for that establishment of a new system, a system that supersedes the old. So in this case, it would be that socialism. It would be that sharing of the resources rather than the capitalism, hoarding of the resources, hyper-individualistic mode of production. So everything that's settled to that, revolutionary suicide, to which then Huey P. Newton goes into reactionary suicide, and where you do work your 9 to 5 for the rest of your life. You are complicit in the ongoing genocides and all of the, bad bad shit that the bourgeois does with the state, all complicit in it. And if anything, you are right and for it. Yeah, the US should be doing that because it's rah rah freedom, or something like that. So that's reactionary suicide as opposed to revolutionary suicide, in which you're like, no, I'm not going to participate in the system earnestly. I'm going to be forced to participate in the system, but I'm not going to like it, and I'm going to organize against it. Revolutionary suicide. So where does this come up with a revolutionary optimism? Where does this come out of left wing optimism from suicide? In order to be in this suicidal sense, right, you would have to fight for something, and that fighting for something comes with this interest and desire, this optimism, this sort of push, this motivation and stuff. And of course, the antithesis, the antithetical would be pessimism. But you get this desire to suicide, right, either if you are in the system or out of the system, by this sort of desire and wanting to be. So I always layer all of my critiques or all of my discussions with the critique against spirituality. Optimism, and this revolutionary optimism, is one of those critiques against spirituality, not as a jab or hate to spirituality in the same ways that Karl Marx has critiqued capitalism, not in a jab or hate of the mode of production, but as a general critique and an understanding that we can do better. Spiritualism can do better. We just have to add a materialist analysis to it. And this is where revolutionary optimism comes in. So we break down revolutionary optimism as this motivation, as this push, as this desire, as this going towards. And the two that makes the one of revolutionary optimism, as I've derived, is stamina and discipline. And of course, the inverse of those is not stamina or no discipline, a loss of control and a loss of having stamina. So optimism is this push forward, broken down into two. You have your substance and your framework. Substance is your stamina, your framework is your discipline, which makes your entire optimism for this revolutionary stance. So we'll break it down. Revolutionary optimism, you must have revolutionary stamina as opposed to reactionary stamina, and revolutionary discipline as opposed to reactionary discipline. But we're going to focus on the revolutionary side as this force that grows, adapts, and doesn't conform to the material condition, but weaves its way within, where it is all, communal, social, nothing's rubbing, there's no rub, there's no, contention and stuff like that. Revolutionary optimism is this supplement and complement to revolutionary suicide. So first, I like to explain revolutionary optimism like this. In order to have revolutionary optimism, first you have to want something. And if you don't want anything, then there's no motivation to do anything. But in this very big, grand, vast world, all of us thrown into this material condition, we pretty much formulated what we want, how we want, to which ways we want to get stuff and the things that we desire and stuff like that. So we already have a base sort of foundation of things that we want. Revolutionary optimism hones in this desire and want into a liberatory work or into a facet that is social, communal, something that is serviceable to the community at hand, to the people and your neighbor next to you, rather than serviceable like reactionary suicide to the aims of personal and individual, and something that is private. It's just something that's similar to capitalism. It's private, privatized equity, privatized capital, personalized interests, stuff like that. The opposite and the inverse, social, communal work. We got all that figured it out. But revolutionary optimism is that building of the stamina, having revolutionary stamina and having discipline to structure that stamina or to structure that energy and effort. So I like to say it like this. Revolutionary optimism is having revolutionary stamina and discipline, of which both come from its exhaustion. So in order to build revolutionary stamina, you have to exhaust it all, so that you know what it's like to run out of steam. So you know what the feeling is like to know how far you can go and the limits at which you can exert yourself at. That itself is a negation. Having exhausted all of your stamina, you build discipline. You build discipline through this exhaustion of stamina of not going anymore. You know your limits. Knowing your limits builds discipline. You know how far you can go. You know when you can stop. And you know how, basically if you can go farther or not. Don't overextend yourself. That is discipline. You know how far, but if you go too far, you'll know. I need to retract myself, pull myself back, avoid burnout, avoid any sort of overextending and reach that could damage not just your physical self, but your mental self as well. I'm currently struggling with that right now. I got a lot on my plate, but it's quite fun. So In this exhaustion of revolutionary stamina, you build discipline. And in the universe as well, regarding discipline, you exhaust your discipline to build stamina. And how do you exhaust your discipline? You reach that stage of burnout. You almost reach that where it's like, damn, I can't do nothing no more. Burnout is a real thing. And it'll come right up you and nip you in the butt, at least when you expect it. Because you're always trying to do everything. And this is reactionary discipline. You want to do everything, and so you're going to want to do everything. You're going to overextend yourself, push yourself out as far as you can to do as much as you can as a single individual. When you don't have that discipline, we have revolutionary discipline. You think you can do everything yourself, or you think you can overextend everything and do everything pretty much as the one individual. And as you know, building community requires more than one. It requires more than just the one individual to build community. Building community is that essence of you need to rely and depend on other people around you. And this is what will build your discipline as a base. Revolutionary discipline will be exhausted through this knowing of your limits and bounds. So instead of overreaching and extending as reactionary discipline would have you, revolutionary discipline, you will know where your limits are. You will know when your negation exists. And we'll get into the negation and negation exactly in the next point. But discipline itself is knowing when to stop, essentially. Stamina is knowing how far you can go. And in the inverse as well, reactionary stamina, sorry, coming down from cold. Reactionary stamina is not knowing how far you can go, and discipline is overreaching and extending. This is where you get your classic burnout. This is where it's your classic, man, I don't know what's going on in life, and I don't know anything, or something going on, and I can't really explain it. That's the schemes of reactionary and privacies, I would say. So revolutionary discipline sets the limits. Revolutionary stamina understands how far you can go, and this will set you a good pace. And this is the pace you need to set yourself at when conducting work. Revolutionary or work in general, if you're going to go to your 9-to-5 regular job, your bourgeois occupied occupation, stuff like that. But having this revolutionary understanding of yourself through evolutionary optimism, you will get a sense of, well, things are going to pass me up along the way, right? If I slow down, but I'm not stopping. And that is the essence of a revolution. There is no stop to a revolution. As Huey P says, you can kill a revolutionary, but you can't kill a revolution. And this optimism is to usher along that revolution farther than we could ever have without this theoretical understanding, right? Knowing your limits, knowing when to stop, knowing your negation, and knowing how far you can reach and how far you can, exhaust yourself. Because the moment you exhaust yourself, people won't even realize or know, and they will still keep trying to go, which will only damage and further damage their understanding and their will to work. Hello, how's it going? But that in essence is revolutionary optimism. It is having that revolutionary stamina, that substance, that knowing of how far you can go, and that discipline, revolutionary discipline of knowing your limits. Once you know your limits and how far you can go, you can pretty much do anything that you want. It just takes time. And time is what replenishes that stamina, builds stronger the foundations of your discipline, to which then you can exert yourself and express what you want to and desire to, right? Your optimism. Revolutionary, because if you do it reactionary, you're going to do what capitalism does. You go up, and then you crash down. And then you go up, and then you crash down. And then you go all over again. You go up, and you crash down. Cyclical market crashes are an inherent aspect to capitalism, mind you. It's not some rare, weird phenomena that... oh my goodness, I'm sorry. It's not some weird phenomena that all of a sudden markets crash and businesses fail and we just don't know what's going on. Oh my God, my business was profitable X amount of years, like 5 or 6 years ago, and then now it's like tanking. I have to file for bankruptcy. What is going on? I don't know. You pretty much figure that out. Historically, and that's where dialectical materialism comes in. Historically, you can see market crashes occur every so often. More recently, as the churning of machines and technology rises, you will get more of this booming of profits and then a downturn in the economic condition for the whole system. But it doesn't just disappear, right? When there is a rise, everyone does well, right? When there is a drop, only a few does well. The rest take the brunt. Or as we would say, The masses take the brunt of that economic despair, whereas the rich, the wealthy, and the capital owning, more like a mosquito bite that they have, medicine for. So to them, market crashes are nothing but a fart in the wind. To us, it is quite literally life or death. And that's what it means to own the means of production. If you own the means of production, economic crashes are just a fart in the wind. Just, oh, what was that smell? That's kind of gross. Not owning the means of production in a privatized mode of production, then of course, if you do experience those economic downturns, sorry, buddy, you're shit out of luck. That's how most people experience economic downturns. It's, oh my God, I'm taking for the storm, taking for the ride. The waves carry me however I go in my life, and I can't do nothing about it. Oh well. But having revolutionary optimism as a getting back on track does build this resilience, does build this understanding of, well, shit does happen, but not just for any reason. Don't say it is what it is just to say it is what it is. I mean, of course, it is what it is, but why? You can always break it down into the two that makes the one, to understanding just really how it is, how it is. It's not just thrown at you. Yeah, boo, bad capitalism, bad, but how and why. Then you read Karl Marx, right? Goodness. I haven't yapped like this in a week. It's like, like throat training or something. So, this establishing of limits, as we explained in discipline, itself, as I said, it was a negation, a natural negation, as I would say. So, well, this idea of a natural negation itself applies itself on top of the negation of the negation explained in dialectics. But the natural negation laws of dialectics applied to life, the most simplest of ways we would say, or I would articulate it, is puberty. You are born young to become old. It's a natural negation. Your initial state of young and joven, or joven, Spanish, young and to be old, that is itself a natural negation. Your young state is negated by the old state. It is literally the new being, or the old being superseded by the new, which is kind of like a play on words, because the old is the new replacing the old, which was the young, the new. A bunch of wordplay there. But to get us back on track, the natural negation itself is to state that indefinite sequence. You are not born old to be, to be young or to be new. You are born young to be old. And this happens everywhere. How do flowers bloom? They go from seed to all of a sudden flower. They're not born flowers, right? From the petals and from the seeds that drop off from the flowers, they become flowers themselves, right? You don't just see spontaneous flowers just erupting. Just it exists now. Where did it come from? Seeds. My goodness. But yeah, a natural negation and this definite sequence explaining why things get old because they were once young, where flowers come from the seeds, and from the caterpillar to the butterfly, because caterpillars aren't born butterflies and butterflies emerge from the cocoon. Definite sequence, as we say, the natural negation. The caterpillar form of that butterfly is negated by its cocoon stage, and that cocoon stage is negated by its butterfly stage. Indefinite sequence, as we say. Because you don't just see, because you may see in throw, oh, there's a cocoon. And then, so many months later when you come back, oh, a bunch of butterflies came out of here, but no cocoons, right? Kind of piece it together. It's not, oh, you see cocoons and then there's caterpillars everywhere after. No, there's a stage that occurs one before another. So caterpillar comes before the cocoon comes before the butterfly, and the butterfly flaps its wing, telling you that it's completed its stage of maturation. It's completed its stages of development, and therefore its next natural negation for its butterfly is the dead butterfly. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. But that is a natural negation itself. Life is always preceded by death. When something lives, it dies. Or as we would say, when something exists, it will no longer exist in the exact rearrangement of its material condition that it does thrown at us in that experience of life. So taking that caterpillar example, right? You see the caterpillar in its particular rearrangement in the caterpillar form, right? The natural negation of this caterpillar, or this negation of the caterpillar, is the cocoon stage. Once it enters the cocoon stage, it has rearranged itself. It is no longer considered a caterpillar. There has been a gradual change, right, in the formulations of its cocoon, to which then it makes its cocoon. That is a revolutionary qualitative change. You don't call it a caterpillar no more. It is now a cocoon. Then after so many times, I don't know the exact sciences of when that cocoon bursts into a butterfly, but after that so many times, that so many weeks, months, that happens, then out emerges a butterfly. It is no longer a cocoon as the one object that we would say. Now we would say that cocoon is a shell, or cocoon was once before. Now we attribute that animal as a butterfly. Ooh, natural negation. The negation of the negation. The caterpillar state was negated by the cocoon. The cocoon was negated as the state by the butterfly. And then the butterfly lives. And that natural negation of the butterfly living is a dead butterfly. Boo. But that is, in essence, the natural negation. Laws of dialectics apply. Just something real quick. You can apply that to everything. Doesn't have to be butterflies. Doesn't have to be, we used boiling water last time a few times. That itself can describe negation as well. So the natural negation and the negation of negation as well as a law of dialectic applicable to everything, because laws of dialectics explain motion in the material condition. They explain how things move. And that movement, of course, occurs with contradiction. Contradiction, of course, is that unity of opposites and struggles. My goodness, my throat is as dry as on fire. Promise I'll heal my throat next time. I swear. Now on to the third bullet point. We're talking about revolutionary optimism, how far you can reach out, and then the limits you set for yourself so you don't overextend yourself. Laws of dialectics apply to life, like cocooning, boiling water, stuff like that. Chicken and egg, you can have a discussion about life and death, the human experience, negation. Now, contradiction. I wanted to get to all three laws of dialectics. I did it 3 or 4 weeks ago. Started off with the second law, gradual into qualitative change, or quantity into qualitative change, right? Revolutionary change, and how we talk about that boiling water. When you add temperature, this quantity, this gradual change into and then it becomes into the boiling water from a state of non-boiling to boiling, that quantity and quality, right? You can see that transformation, that transition. Hit me up. Hit any of us up. We're all friendly people here. But you go into the unity of opposites and struggles, which denotes a particular relationship of contradictions. And contradictions themselves, as I've learned and gave it some thought, not just, they are opposing forces, but the opposition of forces relative to their position. So I've since articulated a type of contradiction, not very surprising, called a complement, but a complement itself, a contradiction and a type to which benefits and explains the particular phenomena at hand. So contradictions are what move life, right? Opposite forces, opposing forces. They move life. If there exists no contradictions, then everything moves in one way. You call that a complement. So because there exist opposing forces inside of an object, it does make that movement. Movement and motion is how stuff occurs. Now that's very theoretical. We're going to base this down into a more material understanding. But when it comes to unity opposite struggles, it does start off very theoretical, right? Opposite forces spur movement of which causes that motion of which we experience and how we attribute that experience of life. Very theoretical stuff. But opposites and struggle is what kind of bridges that bridges the materialism into that, kind of theoretical understanding. Struggle, in which where there is movement and interaction. No struggle means there's no movement, no interaction, nothing happens, right? So I like to say, in the most basics of form, when you're talking about contradictions, unity of opposite struggles, the law of dialectics, is that 2 makes 1. When you can ever see a 1, there is going to be a 2. This whole measuring tape, really cute, right? 6-foot Milwaukee, can be broken down into 2. The measuring tape and the chain. The chain of which can be broken down into 2. The links, the clasp, of which can be broken down into 2. The clasp and the rivet. So you can always break down 1 into the 2, right? So here's the 1, here's the second, here's the 2, here's the 1, the chain, and then here's the 2, and then here's the 1, and then here's the rivet, and then the clasp. That's a 2. And then you can go down even farther and break it down to help you understand how things formulate, how things are. right? Even in this sense right here, two that makes the one, measuring tape. That's right, measuring tape. Even on the red side right here, you have the one, the measuring tape, and then the two, the actual spool, the actual measuring thing. Then you can break down the actual tape itself into the two. This little it's a buffer. This is actually intentional. This allows for 1 millimeter movement, so that when you, let's see, how do I do this? When you're at the edge of a material, you can pull it, and then it compensates that amount. And then when you push it up against something, it moves, and then it moves a millimeter, and then you can compensate for that amount while you make your measurements. So you can get precise measurements. But the two that makes the one. So notice how there's a pair of rivets here, right? You can break down literally the two that makes the one pair of rivets. Two that makes the one. Unity of opposites and struggles. But in this sense, these aren't contradictory forces, right? The two rivets right here aren't contradictory forces. They're not explaining each other's existences away through opposing, phenomena. They just exist. And I would articulate this as a complement. The actual, what is this? The little jig right here, the little jiggly bit right here, the actual jiggly bit right here, and the tape itself, not so much opposing contradictory forces, but complementing. But they're a type of contradiction that help you explain the two that makes the one. So you have the two rivets on this little jiggly bit, right? That's one whole thing to make this little phenomena. Then you have this one jiggly bit with the two rivets, right? That's the one with the actual tape itself that makes two to makes the one actual tape. And then you have the tape itself with all of that, consider the one onto the body, right? To make that another one itself. And then you have the one with the other chain, the two that makes it the one. You have a measuring tape, right? That's kind of how it works. Same thing with the headband. This mic right here with the stand, right? That's one that makes another one to make the one itself, the two that makes the one. But when you're going about your world, living in the material condition and whatnot, just look out and see all of the ones that you see, right? So this is one water bottle. We would always say this is one water bottle, right? One water bottle broken down into two. Potato. Potato can be broken down into two, and you can actually break it down into two, put it in two pieces, or you can actually talk about its different components as well. The chemical makeup or the structure of what makes that. The two that makes the one for potato, the peel, and then the actual insides. That's an easy two that makes the one. This right here, two that makes the one, right? And then even the cap itself, two that makes the one. And even the bottle itself from the inside and outside, two that makes the one. And then you keep going. All right? It's very simple stuff around. But everything does such exist as the two that makes the one. The unity of opposites, more so its struggle. It's more of a theoretical understanding. But the two that makes the one, it helps you break down stuff. So the one, I just picked this up today. I'm going to make a stencil for a flag. Oh, very exciting. Just figuring out what the design's still for. But you have this little saw right here, this hand saw. You have the one saw, which functions and performs as a thing you need it to, but it's broken down into two. The blade, which actually comes out, very cool. And then the handle. The handle itself, broken down into two in the one. The red casing, and then the actual metal hilt for the blade. Stick that back in there. Don't hurt yourself now. Yeah, two that makes the one. It is literally everywhere. Not on not on accident as well. Very much so on purpose, and it is intentional. The two that makes the one exists everywhere in any concept, phenomena, observation, any material existence, right? Even for man himself, the individual. Two that makes the one for the individual, like you call me Jaden, the Jaden person, right? Two that makes the one is Jaden's mind and Jaden's body. We are talking about myself in the third person. But that is the two that makes the one for any individual. Man's mind and his body, to which then synthesizes into the one individual you call they, them, he, him, she, her, Caesar, whatever the pronouns they want, right? But that is the two that makes the one, and it is applicable to everything, right? You have a little box right here, and then it opens up to two sides, but it makes the one box, right? More potato, that's right. That's what I'm talking about. Scissors as well, like the two that makes the one. The one pair of scissors, the one scissors comes with two blades. The two blades itself has two, be careful now, the handles. It's everywhere, and it's applicable to everything. Now, let's stop talking about these material phenomena, very easy to grasp. Let's talk about capitalism. That's what we're here to do. political discussion wouldn't be complete without critique of capitalism. So what is the capitalism that breaks down the two into the one? An entry point to any object or any phenomena can be entered, well, at any point, right? So why specifically talk about, right, the whole entire measuring tape? Why not go specifically into this little stopper right here and talk about that? It's 2 to 1. Well, you can. And that is what happens when you investigate and understand concept and really complicated theoretical phenomena like capitalism as a whole. Boo, big, bad, boo, capitalism. What is that? So what I would say breaks down capitalism into the two that makes the one for it as just an entry point, and then we can then discover of its other apparatus that it functions with. Usually it's private property and the liberal mode of thought. Like together, those two, your thought, the existence of private property, your freedoms to have and such, you can derive a pretty good capitalism from it. And of course, thereafter, a very good imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. But for the two that makes the one for capitalism, you can just pick anywhere and start diving into it. For me, it's always going to be private property and the liberal mode of thought, like liberalism, that freedom, me, myself, and I will do as such, and I will think as such, right? Pair of scissors, the two that makes the one, the blades and then the handle. And then, of course, the blade itself can be, as the one blade, the blade handle, and then the blade itself, two that makes the one. All right, two that makes the one. Very simple. Unity of opposite struggles. That is a law of dialectics. That is a motion. That is a law of motion. Anywhere applicable. Physics, biology, chemistry. Because when you talk about dialectics, especially when you learn it from Lenin and Stalin, you understand that everything itself and the studies of which are just applications of dialectical materialism, or dialectics at least. Right, so mathematics is that observable relationship between plus and minus, right, or add and subtract, right. In chemistry, it is the disassociation and association of atoms and bonds, right, the coming away and going with of your atomic bonds, stuff like that. And then there's another one. Electricity is positive and negative, right, and the relationship between those makes the functions and workings of how. So dialectics apply to any particular field, then creates its study. Dialectics is just that, stepping back and analyzing the entire material condition, dialectical materialism, to that point of study, which itself is the critique of spirituality or critique of idealism. To no longer consider, I think, therefore I am. That's what I'm saying. That itself, a perfect contradiction. Night and day, daydream. That's a, you hit that one right in the head there, Day. That was a perfect synthesization, right? Because the human life experiences night and day, right? It's not just night or day, not like what capitalism and liberal mode of thought wants to tell you. It's not this or that. It's this and that. And they exist not maybe like coexistently or inherently like together, but they do exist. So like contradictions, so like up and down, they exist, and not just only up, and it's not just only down, right? Things exist up and down, left and right, in and out, plus and minus, right? And together. That is how you derive its relationship. And we develop a deeper theoretical understanding. I like to use the words, I like to use the contradictions, this explanation of appropriation and appreciation. That's pretty much applicable to everything. Throw and forward. Those are terms that, I've formulated. We'll talk about them right now. We got plenty of time. So the unity of opposites and struggles, the two that makes the one, opposing forces and motion. I deliver to you the existential phenomena of object state of relation. A lot of big words. This is what you grasp onto. Throw and forward. Now, this is an existential understanding of the material condition. Throw. What is quite literally thrown at you in your perception and how you perceive the world, how you exist in the world. What is thrown at you for the first time, right? So when I said those words, the phrase itself, throw and forward, that itself was a thrown concept. Now I'm explaining it to you. That explanation is what forward is. So picking up what I'm throwing down. When something is explained to you or you investigate, you develop your understanding of that object. You are forwarding your understanding of that object, right? To which then creates a new throw, because that is how negation works. And all these laws intertwine with each other. So the forward state of an object negates or is negated by a new understanding of the object. So when you understand something, right, before, you forward yourself on it. Now you understand something new about it. That is a new throw. To which that throw invites a new forward. To which that forward invites a new throw. It goes back on each other, just like life and death. You know how we say life is a circle of life? It is a circle, life and death, circle, it's all right there right in front of you. So the circle of life, you have life and then death, and then life and then death. It just keeps going. Throwing forward's the same way. Appreciation, appropriation is the same way. So I'll explain through negation of the negation. But we have this life and death, this throw and forward. In throw, things appear to you at first in this existential sense. So let's say I utter the word, maybe some of you may not know, Martin Heidegger. That guy was a philosopher. Don't look him up as a person. Look him up what he did. Don't look him up as a person. That guy was a Yahtzee. That was not a good guy. But he made correct observations about the material condition, just that much. That guy was still an idealist. So I critiqued the hell out of his work, added materialism to it in the same ways that Karl Marx did with Adam Smith, and of course other bourgeois economics as well. At the same ways that Engels did with Hegel, just add and sprinkle in, layer in some materialism. You have a solid theory. That is pretty much basically what we do around here. Theoreticians in the modern material day, utilizing dialectical materialism, looks back at work's ideal and just sprinkles in some materialism. Bam, you have a functioning theory. Communism, functioning theory. Dialectical materialism, not so much a theory, it is an outlook of the world, but itself theoretical when not praxied. Theory, right? Just sprinkle in some materialism. Where does these things stem from? Not man's mind. Man's mind is a little bit of an ideal notion, right? Dialectical materialism understands that, no, it is the material condition that then stems and births, emerges out of the immaterial condition, man's mind. Rocks, space dust, the void itself existed well before we can ever think about farting. Even before we can even make farts, the space and rocks and stuff would just crash it into each other. Opposing forces attracting each other like this, every which way, in the chaotic realms of early space, to which then, now we have a capitalism. Now people have to go work a dead-end job and not get anything from it. That's kind of how we develop so far. Kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna lie to you right now. Capitalism is great. We haven't been doing much with our existences, but that is where we get to our political discussions and occasion times, right? But notice how the two that makes the one, you can just do it and it happens, right? Life itself existing, especially in particularly economically, the rich, the poor, two that makes the one, the entire economic system, more so explain capitalism, right? Two that makes the one. But we're talking about throw and forward, right? In throw, as I like to say, in throw, poor people. What about them, right? In throw, rich people. What about them? What do you think about it? To which then you forward or you express yourself in understanding of that particular utterance, the phenomena, to which then you gain a better understanding of it. The understanding of which layered and sifted through dialectical materialism to help you truly know what is an absolute into the condition of the material condition. Because, I'll say it right here, we're all looking at the same damn thing called life, Earth, the material condition. We're all looking at the same thing. Our perceptions at which may skew that understanding, but that is because that foundation of understanding is, at most, more so recently, reactionary. It is not based in a theoretical understanding. It is not based in a material understanding. It is whatever man wants it to be, it gon' be. That's kind of how reactionaries work. If it gon' be, it gon' be. But then, dialectical materialist, the theoretician, says, no, it is one way. That it is the way that the material condition has rearranged it as. And we must appreciate the fact, not appropriate it. Right? So when we talk about labor as well, labor, the two that makes the one in the capitalist system, appropriated and appreciated. You can appropriate a labor and appreciate a labor in the definite sequence of which, if you appropriate a labor first, you appreciate a profit. That's kind of how the capitalist system works. You appropriate first to then appreciate the after. Think about holidays, right? Holidays were formulated by its appropriation of a particular group. I'm not going to say which one. They called it Columbus Day. They changed it from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Like they couldn't get it right the first time, like not commit a genocide or whatever. But your appropriation first, to which then you can appreciate a day off from work. Wow. I'm so excited to live in this capitalist hellscape and where we celebrate the lives of dead millions indigenous by having one day off from the capitalist hellscape that churns out and exploits our labor every single day. Isn't that great? It is such a great system to live in, and where the holidays at which we are to appreciate actually come from genocidal maniacs and individuals who like to see the world suffer and rot because they want to reap profits that they did not sow. Isn't that like super great? Like, why are we living this timeline? Timeline's straight up hell. Two that makes the one. It's everywhere. You want to look at something or anything, you look at the one thing, it can be broken down into, you just have to know how to, right? Oh yeah, it's fun. Happy Columbus. Well, Columbus guy, I was a white guy. We're celebrating that white guy, and then it changed to Happy Indigenous Day. I'm like, so now we're not even going to, so I bet you, all of the money in my pocket, I'm not having my wallet, so you're not getting anything. What's taught in schools, and I know this for a fact, is not historically accurate. We call it the period of mandatory indoctrination, the mandatory indoctrination period. Call that school, the U.S. education system, right? And the two that makes the one for the school is that mandatory, you have to be there or it's illegal. Indoctrination, you're not getting told the truth. If anything, at its most light sense, and it's giving it the most generous capacities, it is propaganda. But that propaganda is just outright lies, just historical fallacies. You're literally telling the kids, this is what happened when it really didn't. My little brother's in sophomore year right now. They're teaching about communism, and they're all, communism bad, boo, the totalitarianism. Communism is when people are poor. Capitalism when people are rich. And they're telling them imperialism is when good, because you are inviting newer technologies into a lesser developed area. Imperialism good. Private property good, because you have individual freedom and rights. And wouldn't you like to have your ideas yours, not some other scummy person trying to take all of your money because you had a good idea and they took your idea and then now they're privatizing it off themselves? You should be the one to be able to privatize off of it. Yeah, that's a capitalism. That is what is being told to our youth right now, which absolutely terrifies me. And what terrifies me more is that my little brother knows it, and that's not what terrifies me, is no one else knows it. No one else understands it. And then when he tries to talk to people about it, he's all of his peers, classmates are all, bro, just do the work. Bro, why don't you just lock in? Oh my goodness. It is quite horrifying, the tales you hear of these high school students who are just going on with this system. And I'm saying who to blame them, right? Because that is all within their scheme. That's all that they know. So why would they think otherwise, right? Not to give them a pass, but to acknowledge the material conditions that they exist in. What else do they have to compare it against? And should you have any other examples, alternatives, different mode of productions, economies, plans, or any sort of which way that threatens this mode of production, because they have been taught this way? Reactionary, baby. They're all reactionary suicidals. No, don't do that. It doesn't work. Communism don't work. Socialism don't work. Sharing resources. What about that guy who's an asshole who doesn't share? Which we say, what makes him an asshole, right? What makes anyone anything? People become, right? And in utilizing the law of dialectics, you understand that, well, people become into which ways that the material condition say that they can. Because if you don't have access to anything or any which way that helps your development, you're not going to develop, right? You can't just manifest your development and be like, I'm going to be a super smart kid. But you have no materials to study, learn off of, appreciate, and understand. You only get the concepts of being a smart kid. You don't actually get and be a smart kid, but you don't have that understanding because you're not present in the material condition to have that. That's why it's important to have schools everywhere, a solid education program for all, universal health care so that people can be healthy, right? If there's no social safety net, everyone's just going to start plopping over. Now, I will say this, though. It is the mere fact that we do exist in such an individualistic world and that the only way to get out of it is quite literally the other way. to build community. There is no other third position. The third position, quote unquote, is just a derivative of that first position, another flavor of individualism. So the only real way out is just quite literally the other way, which is great. But I did want to get to say this. During my travels in Arkansas, right, I did get a chance to talk to my dad, conservative, my uncle, conservative, and then, of course, Arkansas itself, kind of conservative, especially in the area that we were in. So what I noticed was that, well, yeah, of course, people in their schemes natural are not going to think any other which way. People have property out there. People have rights, freedoms. They have stuff, having stuff of which they can do stuff to which rearranges the material condition to which they believe and understand how the world works. All's fine and dandy. It's how they go about that understanding to which does make that scheme. People don't understand how to utilize the material condition of the which ways to nurture and benefit a community. It's not going to happen. They're just going to be able to do stuff with the stuff that they have to make that stuff happen in those particularly privatized ways. Oh, don't worry about it. I got my own, or I will buy my own, some X, Y, and Z to get it done, right? I'm not going to go out and ask my neighbor to borrow it. What if they want something in return? I don't want to owe them anything. Me. It builds that scheme, privatized scheme. My guy's meowing. He's at the door. He's like, let me out, let me out. I'm not letting him out. Not right now, at least. I'll be out there to watch him later. But we build this scheme through our material conditions and what we have. Should we not have any of those conditions, we cannot make anything happen. No new havings. So it is important to give people this education. Because if no social safety net, that's what I was trying to get at. You'll not believe the amount of people that it takes, or that say, getting rid of income tax is one of the best things ever because you have more money in your pocket. Okay, so how do you pay for other social services? They should be able to figure it out themselves. Huh? Excuse me. What happens if you were in that economic, position where you could not support yourself? Oh, me? I would never be in that position. I'm like, you sure about that? Are you sure that you won't be, economically oppressed? I'm not, and I won't be. Okay, to each their own. I'm not going to argue with anyone like that. But understand, you have to have these, right, these social safety nets for people to live, right? Not everyone has access to clean water right now because, of course, privatized industry. Not everyone can have access to clean food and housing, is structural housing because it's been privatized. And not everyone can have access to, therapy or any sort of, mental stimulation and health and nurturing because it's been privatized and stuff like that. And that's kind of where you get all your problems. Where do criminals come from? Privatization of social safety nets, which allow people to gain their subsistence. If people don't have subsistence, they're going to get it either which way. And that is a systemic force. That is not the individual saying, I'm a bad person, I like to steal, I'm going to go steal some stuff. Said no individual person who was born ever without experiencing economic downturns and conditions. Like, people aren't born bad. In the same ways, people aren't born good either. People become. And as Huey P says, human behavior is a learned behavior. You learn how to be good. You learn how to be bad. You learn how to be bad by which the system neglects to provide for you. Now you know, oh, I can't rely on this institution to provide for me. I will have to provide for myself. That provisions through self, more often than not, violates the law of which enforced kind of gets you thrown in jail. Like, how else would you want the individual to survive? Would you want them to croak over and die? Of which the conservative is like, yes, sir, yes, son, we don't like them kind of around here. Really heard that. That was quite the insane take. Kept my mouth shut for that one. I couldn't argue with any person like that. It would just be a stonewall and a stalemate. They're like, oh, if you're not going to stop believing what you believe, that's fine. That's where we get into praxis. That is where we get into building revolution and building community. Let our work be the example to show for those who do not, appreciate or understand the fact. I would do more in an hour organizing and building conversations with other people, like, to get things moving along, than an hour-long conversation with a conservative who wouldn't change positions. Now, this is not to say that conservatives don't change positions. I've known conservatives who does, but it is more so have knowing when to. There's that revolutionary discipline as well, knowing when to stop, knowing your limits and knowing how to progress further. Revolutionary, not reactionary, right? You can keep going. That's like pushing a brick wall and not wondering why it's not budging, but still going anyways, right? I'm pushing, I'm doing the thing that's supposed to make it go, but it's not going, right? Lack of awareness, stuff like that. Here we go. Oh my God, couple minutes till. Let me nurture my throat again. We're gonna go from bottom to top to recap the session, and then we'll do open discussion or something. All right, cool. Look at this guy. He ran away yesterday. He jumped the fence to the other neighbor's fence, and he was stuck there all day. We were wondering, where'd this guy go? Where'd my fucking cat go? And I hear him, meow, 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 meow. Yeah, that's what you sounded like. All like, it's like an hour or two yesterday. And he was trembling, he was shaking. Dude, that guy is not for the streets. That cat is not for the streets. Like, he thinks he's some punk, he thinks he's some fool. One day outside, he got his ass whooped. Psh, psh, psh. I want to come inside, I want to go. Now he wants to go outside, but he doesn't want to jump the gate now. Okay. Yeah, it's just an access to more resources, really. So there's another contradiction. So I say appreciation, appropriation, throw and forward, these complements and contradictions to explain the material condition. There's one that I developed recently. Accessibility and deniability apply to everything. And one of those things can be resources. The accessibility to a resource obviously is the deniability of not having that feeling. And the deniability of that resource is the accessibility to that feeling in the inverse. So when you have the accessibility to water, food, subsistence, right, you deny yourself that feeling of hardship, deny that yourself that feeling, or, that conditions that would be otherwise oppressive, right? And of course, in the inverse, when you do not have accessibility, or when you are denied access to those, then you access yourself to those feelings, those conditions, then you experience it. Very fun ways to apply different contradictions and understandings. But yeah, if people just had more resources, imagine that. Crime would just not be non-existent, because crime is something that's made up. Well, systemically, of course. People and actions doing which ways. People do that stuff. People can take up a and just beeper, right? That's an action of which, but why does the individual do that? If everyone had enough of everything, there would be none of that. Especially when you have an educated workforce or an educated knowledge base for your people. Education is first and foremost. That's why I'm here. So cool. I know we're a little bit over. Oh my God, the 1 minute left. Starting from the top, starting from the bottom. Unity of opposites and struggles, the two that makes the one. Just know that every time you look at a one thing, you can break it down into the two of which helps explains the one. Each individual two themselves, the one can be broken down into the two, to which better helps explains the one that was part of the two to makes the one, right? So it's like a recursive kind of a relationship. You can always break stuff down, and then any different facet of understanding as well. It could be conceptual, could be articulable, like verbiage, or it could be material as well, an observation like color and stuff like that. Like two that makes the one. This has a color scheme of red and black. Two that makes the one. Till we get the one measuring tape. Then you get natural negation. Natural negation is this definite sequence. So like when we say puberty, right? You are born young to be old. You are not born old to be young. There is which ways that exist, definite, that it must happen this way, and not must because we want, but must because it does. Puberty is one of those things that, can really get this example, this natural negation across very quickly. This, you grow through this change, this puberty, to which then you become older, to which then that old becomes a new, that new can get older until you die. Boo. But that is part of life. Natural negation, right? Natural negation is that life and death. And then, of course, revolutionary optimism. The two that makes the one is that the stamina and discipline, not necessarily contradictions like throwing forward, but revolutionary optimism is that complement, supplement to revolutionary suicide, of which both, get out of here. We're ending in a couple minutes anyways. Cool. course, sessions are recorded. Will be up on the YouTube. We'll be all fine and dandy. Revolutionary Optimism, supplement to Revolutionary Suicide, of which antithetical to reactionary suicide and reactionary pessimism, or reactionary optimism in that sense too. That was pretty much it. Good, nice hour-long yap session. That's it out of me. That's all I have to offer. I have a lot more to talk about, a lot more stuff to do, a lot of GSUS things to do as well. But appreciate you. Hit me in the DMs if you want to have your New England session set up. If you want to have a topic, brought up, or I can bring something to the table, something relevant. This is more general, but if you want to get into more specifics, like specific politics as well, I do keep up with the news sometimes. But yeah, hit me up. See what your folks are interested in. Yeah, that's always a good one. People always show up to what they're interested in. So it's out of me. I'll hang out for a couple minutes. No, I usually just go with the flow. Recently, it's been dialectical materialism as a whole. So like the laws of dialectics, dialectical materialism. Last week was an expansion of the negation. The week before was quality and quantity. But for me, it was dialectics. I think we'll do more dialectics next week. But whatever you want to talk about. Whatever your group is more interested in, I can always revolve a discussion around that, because dialectics in the application of pretty much does that. Cool. Hit me up. Let me know. We'll be there. We'll have all of that stuff. Thank you. If you need to go. I'm not holding anyone. So, yes. Thank you. Appreciate you. And if that's it, I'm heading out now. So, thank you so much for being here. Love you all. See you next week. Most likely, I will be here. Last week was an anomaly. My trip wasn't supposed to be that long. That's it. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate you. Love you. Have a good day. Long live the people. Now this is for you people. Happy Wednesday, stuff like that. Cool. Appreciate you all. Revolutionary suicide, revolutionary optimism, long live the revolution, all power to the people. That's how we do it around here.